In the quaint town of Cedarwood, Julia and James epitomized the ideal of young love blossoming into a mature partnership. Their romance had been a whirlwind of shared dreams and spontaneous adventures, culminating in a cozy wedding that still had the town talking. When Julia announced her pregnancy just weeks after their vows, their joy seemed to mirror the sunny spring that enveloped Cedarwood. The couple's excitement was uncontainable. Julia, with her radiant glow, and James, always by her side, were fixtures at Dr. Helen's clinic, eagerly watching the growth of their baby on the grainy ultrasound screen. Their life was unfolding exactly as they had hoped, or so it seemed. As the weeks passed, the nursery took shape. A palette of soft grays and warm whites peppered with hand-painted murals of forest animals. James took great pride in assembling the crib and shelves, his usual quiet demeanor giving way to bursts of excitement with each finished task. They were ready, or at least they believed they were. However, life's propensity for surprise turned their world upside down one fateful evening. At only 28 weeks, during a modest baby shower filled with laughter and stories, Julia's laughter turned to panic. Sharp, unexpected contractions seized her, slicing through the festivities like a storm. Friends rushed to her aid as her world contracted to pinpoints of pain. In the sterile calm of the emergency room, the reality they faced was stark. Julia was in premature labor. James, pale and wide-eyed, held Julia's hand, his presence a silent pillar of strength amid the chaos. Yet nothing could have prepared them for the doctor's next words. "It's a girl," announced Dr. Helen as the first baby made an unexpectedly early entrance into the world. James, stunned, managed only a feeble smile. The confusion was palpable. Only a boy had shown on the scans. But before they could grasp the situation, Dr. Helen urged Julia on. "Push, Julia, there's more." A boy followed, his cries piercing the tense air. And then, astonishingly, another scream. A third baby, another boy, arrived, completing the trio of miracles. The triplets, Andy, Amara, and Ashton, each a tiny testament to life's unpredictability. The babies, though premature, were fighters, their early days spent under the vigilant care of the neonatal team. Julia, recovering and resilient, was a fixture by their side, her dreams adapting to her new reality. James, however, seemed to retreat with each passing day. His smiles were slower, his visits shorter. One cold morning, as Julia rested in her hospital room, a nurse handed her a folded note with James's handwriting. "Gone for diapers," it read, a simple explanation for his absence that morning. But as hours turned into days with no sign of James, the weight of his absence bore down on Julia's shoulders. A realization dawned, dark and unwelcome, that he might not return. The day Julia and her triplets were discharged, she returned to an echoing, empty home. James's belongings were gone. The only sign he had ever planned to come back was a half-assembled rocking chair and a note left on the kitchen table that read, "I can't face this, Julia. I'm sorry." His words, meant to be an apology, felt like a final betrayal. With the walls of her once joyful home now seeming to close in, Julia's heart ached not just from the physical strain, but from the profound betrayal. In her arms, her three little miracles gurgled and cooed, oblivious to the storm that raged around them. In their eyes, Julia found the strength to rebuild, to hope, and to love without reserve. They were her unexpected miracles, and she vowed with every fiber of her being to give them the world, no matter the odds stacked against them. As the cedar trees of Cedarwood whispered with the winds of change, Julia found herself grappling with the profound demands of new motherhood, triplets no less. Under the shroud of James's abandonment, her home, once filled with the laughter and plans of a growing family, now echoed with the coos and cries of Andy, Amara, and Ashton, while silence filled the spaces where James's voice had once resonated. Despite the overwhelming exhaustion, Julia's love for her triplets was a fierce flame that burned through the darkest nights. Into this chaos stepped Eric, a longtime friend who had shared in the couple's joys, and now stepped into the void left by James. Eric, with his easy smile and hands ready to work, became a steadfast presence in the household. His visits grew from weekly to daily, his initial offers of help transforming into shared responsibilities and deep, meaningful bonds with the infants. Eric had known James since college, a friendship born of shared classes and dormitory life. He had been a groomsman at their wedding, and his betrayal by James was almost as personal as Julia's. As he watched Julia struggle, his protective instincts were coupled with a growing resentment toward his friend for the pain caused. One rainy evening, as Eric rocked Ashton to sleep, Julia brewed a strong pot of coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen. They sat at the table, a spread of baby monitors between them, when Eric broached the subject he had long avoided. "Julia, there's something I need to tell you about James," Eric began, his voice hesitant. The look in his eyes was enough to tighten Julia's stomach with dread. She braced herself, nodding for him to continue. "What about James?" "It's about how he started dating you," Eric said, pausing as if weighing each word. "He did it on a dare, a bet with some of our old college friends. They challenged him to court you, thinking you were out of his league. He never thought he'd actually fall for you." The room seemed to spin as Julia absorbed Eric's words. Betrayal, already sharp and bitter, took on a new edge, slicing deeper. Her marriage, her fairy tale, had started as a game. She felt foolish, naive. "How long have you known this?" Julia's voice was calm, too calm. "Since the beginning," Eric admitted, his voice soft. "I thought it was just stupid guy stuff at first, that it would end quickly. But then he really fell for you. And I hoped it didn't matter anymore." Tears welled up in Julia's eyes, but her gaze was fixed on Eric, who met her eyes with a remorse so profound that it was palpable. "Why tell me now?" "Because you deserve the truth, especially now. And because I care about you, Julia. More than as just a friend. I didn't want any more secrets between us," Eric confessed, his voice thick with emotion. The revelation shook Julia, but as she watched Eric, a man who had shown nothing but kindness and support, her heart began to differentiate the sincerity in his actions from the deceit of her past. The evening stretched on as they talked, navigating through the hurt towards a tentative new understanding. In the weeks that followed, as Cedarwood's lush landscapes bloomed into summer, Eric's presence in the house became more than just supportive. It was essential. He didn't just help with night feedings or diaper changes. He shared stories at dinner, fixed broken toys, and became a fixture at playgrounds and pediatrician appointments. The children, too, grew to adore Eric, his name among their first babblings. Their acceptance of him seemed to seal a new chapter for the small family, a chapter marked not by the shadow of James's betrayal but by the light of new beginnings. Eric was no longer just a friend in need but a partner in every sense, filling the roles as both confidant and culprit with a grace that surprised them both. As trust blossomed between Julia and Eric, it anchored them against the trials of single parenthood, turning pain into a partnership that neither had anticipated but both deeply cherished. This unexpected journey of heartache and healing was underscored by the innocent laughter of three little children who knew only love regardless of its source. And for Julia, this new love was a salve to her wounded heart, a testament to finding hope and happiness in the most unexpected places. 5 years had woven deep ties between Julia, Eric, and the triplets in the quiet rhythms of Cedarwood life. The town, with its sprawling maples and sleepy streets, had watched the family grow, their resilience a story often whispered over coffee at the local diner. Julia had found her stride in motherhood, and in her revived career as a graphic designer, her creativity flourishing alongside her children's laughter. The peace of a mundane Thursday shattered when Julia received a call at work. There was a package, and an unexpected visitor, waiting in her office. Her curiosity piqued. She hurried back, expecting perhaps a new client or delivery. Instead, standing in the dim light of the lobby was James. He was leaner, his eyes carrying the weight of unspoken years, and his presence a ghost from a past Julia had struggled to put behind her. "Julia," James began, his voice a mix of nervousness and something unreadable. "I know I'm the last person you want to see." Stunned, Julia managed a curt nod, leading him to her office, her mind racing with questions and old hurts resurfacing. Once behind closed doors, James wasted no time. "I've made mistakes, Julia. I'm not here to excuse them. I'm here because I'm in trouble and I need help." His plea was desperate, his situation dire. James spoke of lost jobs, mounting debts, and a life spiral out of control. He was a man grasping for a lifeline. "I need money, Julia, just enough to get back on my feet. I'll leave you alone after that." Julia's initial shock gave way to a cold anger. "You walked back into our lives after 5 years, and now you expect help," she demanded, her voice rising. James's desperation turned to coercion. "I know things, Julia, things that could make life difficult for you and Eric. I'm not proud of it, but I will use them if I have to." The threat hung heavy between them. Julia's protective instincts flared, not just for her children, but for the life she and Eric had built from the ashes James left behind. "Get out," she said firmly, "before I call security." After he left, Julia's hands trembled as she dialed Eric's number, her voice steady only by force of will. When Eric arrived, his calm was a balm to her frazzled nerves. Together, they decided to take action, not just to defend their family, but to confront the threat James posed once and for all. Their first step was legal, consulting with an attorney to discuss their options for restraining orders and the potential implications of James's threats. As the legal gears began to turn, Julia and Eric prepared for the possibility of a public battle, one that might expose their private lives, but would also shield their family from harm. Weeks turned into months as the legal proceedings drew out. James's threats, once veiled, became overt attempts to intimidate, each more desperate than the last. But Julia and Eric stood firm, their resolve hardened by each other's support and the innocent smiles of Andy, Amara, and Ashton, who remained blissfully unaware of the storm raging around them. The court case eventually began, a grim theater where James's history of deception and abandonment was laid bare for all to see. Witness testimonies corroborated Julia's claims, painting James as manipulative and unreliable. The community of Cedarwood, once spectators, became Julia and Eric's staunchest allies, their collective support a testament to the bonds the family had formed. As the trial concluded, the judge's gavel was a sound of finality. James was found guilty of extortion and coercion, his threats turning back upon him. The verdict brought a wave of relief to Julia and Eric, who had braced outside the courtroom, their future finally secure. With James's shadow lifted, the family could move forward. Eric's role in the triplets' lives was no longer just that of a stepfather, but a true parent. His bond with Julia deepened by adversity and triumph. Together, they faced the future, not just as survivors of past pain, but as architects of their happiness, building a life of love and security for themselves and their children. Julia often looked back on those turbulent years, marveling at how they had navigated them. She had faced despair and betrayal, but also found love and resilience in their aftermath. As she watched the triplets play under the sprawling branches of Cedarwood's maples, she knew that every struggle had been worth it, for it led them to a life filled with love. A life where the past, no matter how painful, was just a stepping stone to a brighter future.